Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to take a look at a game called Blackout Hong Kong by Alexander Pfister, one of my fantastically favorite game designers after Great Western Trail. You can't begin to imagine my surprise and giddiness when I found out that Alexander Pfister, great designer, was going to team up with Scorpions and put out a game based on their hit Blackout. Na 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 na, Blackout. Ha 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 ha. Unfortunately, it looks like the Scorpions weren't able to make the gig, so it turns out the game is actually just about a blackout that occurs in Hong Kong, and you're supposed to help a bunch of people solve it. That doesn't mean the game still isn't good, so let's take a look. Game in a little progress to give you an example of the components and the structure of the game. This will simplify, I think, considerably what's going to go on. First off, you've got your map. This is the map of Blackout Hong Kong. This is Hong Kong, it's blacked out. Pretty good symmetry there. The rondelle is where you roll the dice for resources based on where you roll and certain color-coded cards you play. You will be able to grab certain resources, which you will then spend to get workers to help you, mission objectives, solutions, etc. We'll go over that later. The actual map itself is covered with different color points, and each of those you could build or place cubes on as you earn the right to place cubes on them from clever card play. And also, once you surround a certain area, or once an area is surrounded, then everyone around there is going to get points, and whoever's most dominant in completing it and getting that circle will be able to place a beacon of glory, or a house, and that house will give them special bonuses. This game is about 10,000 bonuses. Yeah, it's like a 100 pack. And then you have a bunch of cards, which we'll go into, and you have a bunch of, well, chits. Like each player has a player board. Those player boards are where you will store cards that you will gain, and those cards, once you gain them, will give you bonuses, bonus cubes to get resources. That's for that. Notice the red die, red cubes. Aha. Clever. And you will get bonuses for actually completing the prerequisites to buy this card in one of the phases. This is where it gets clever, because when you play the game, you're going to place cards into these sections, these segments here. Then you flip them up and you activate them. It's going to grow. You're just going to accumulate different stacks of cards. Once you're down to a certain amount of cards left in your hand, you take the largest collection and you stick them back in your hand. So you're constantly going to be shuffling back and forth, going, worrying about where you place your cards, so that you try to get the cards you really want most valuably to be back in your hand onto the biggest pile, if you can do it. It's interesting, though. Very subtle way to kind of help people, like, refresh their deck without just going in and doing a mega, I used all my cards, shuffle, I used all my cards, shuffle, I used all my cards, shuffle. You also have a hospital where your helpers can go when they're feeling sick, or they went on a scouting mission and got harmed, etc. A little extra bonuses galore. This game is bonuses galore. You'll notice even on the map, like, every single section has bonus, 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 bonus. And every player has pretty much the same thing. This is where you're actually going to buy these cards to be able to put their objective cards. There's a two-phase to getting a card into your hand. First off, you get one of these cards by paying for them, 4, 3, or 2, based on how many cards are in a row. Once you do that, they go into your objective pile, or in your objective set. Then, when it's time during your phase, this objectives phase of your turn, you will spend, if you can, this resource plus this resource. That will give you this card into your hand. It looks like a carrot, but it actually says, oh, into your hand you go. And you usually get to put one of your cubes out onto the board. Everything feeds into everything else. Everything's louder than everything else. So that's how that works. And then, of course, it goes going into your hand, and then you have that available here to use, and you sort of slowly accumulate and build up a more powerful ability to be able to tackle the egregious lack of color in Hong Kong as far as light is concerned. And that's kind of the basic overview of the game components. We'll play a sample turn now by showing you a first mission from the campaign. Now, I've set this up for solo play because, well, that's solo as I can go. But there's not a lot different between multiplayer and single player as far as the setup is concerned. In this case, you're dealing with people gathering on the streets, there's no electric power, there's anger, blah, 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 blah. Playing with full player, you remove 33 cards, you set up emergency plans. These normally are supposed to be for solo play out here in kind of no man's land where people can share them, but we're not going to do that because it's just me and my onesie. We've set up the board. Everything is set up. There's not a lot going on yet, but there will be. But we're going to show an example of how Blackout works even as we go through it. Interesting enough, with the solo play, you're going to play 5 missions through the campaign just like you would if there were 2 to 4 players and such, with the end result being if you I have to be able to place a cube on each goal of that emergency plan card that I just showed you. So all 3 of these goals need to be fulfilled, and I need to be able to get at least 75 points. And so as a single, it's an interesting solo endeavor. There's a lot of little mini goals to have to go contend with. And you'll see that I start off with 2 of my guys already in the hospital. Apparently that's how it works when the power goes out. Your leader goes AWOL into the metavan. The default, you get these cards laid out. You get 2 objectives to start with, and you get a handful of 7 cards. And with that, let's roll into the first turn of the game. Now, what's handy is that everything you need to know rolls up the chain. There's been some questions about why you don't do the normal top to bottom, but I kind of actually like the bottom to top because you start off with the cards that you have here and you just kind of roll up to the different decision makings. I suppose if they had your cards up here, that you could go down the list, but for some reason, it's probably just better to have them down here. I think it grows better that way. I don't know. Either way, we're going to go up the chain. So roll resource dice and plan our cards. So we roll it. Oh, I think everybody starts with a battery, if I recall. If not, then hey, I'm a cheating. Food, medical supplies, and gasoline. Now we have to take 3 cards, and we have to choose from these cards what we want to play in our planning area. That planning area is over here. We're going to overlap them as time goes on. So these are the cards we have at our disposal, these are in jail, not jail. They're in medical jail, but here we go. So then we're going to choose which cards we want. Now notice that the different icons, you get the benefit at the top. If you have stuff on the bottom is just for the one-time effect when you earn a card, you pay this cost and then you can take this advantage. But then after that, it's all about the top. There's only one way to top. All right, so we choose. What do we have? So we look at our dice and go, for me, if I want medical supplies or I want food, I want red. So I'm going to use red. It will become clear in a moment. I'm going to place that face down over here in a pile of my choosing. I think I'm okay putting it there. Then I am going to take probably yellow. Nope, I'm going to take the gas can. I'm going to take yellow. Yes, I am. I'm going to put the yellow here, right there, because I'm okay with it being out for a while before getting it back. Then we decide from here what we have left. Now we could go for colors, but we could also go for these, which have special abilities. These are our special dudes: Scout, Doctor, and Mechanic. The Scout is interesting because if I pay a medical cost, which I could theoretically do, except I don't really have a card yet to do it, I'm going to keep that one for next time. This one says if I pay a gas or I pay a book, I get a marker, a scout marker. Now scout markers come into play when you're exploring the map. Then otherwise, I could just get 3 coins, and if I give away a mechanics tool thingy-mabobber, that's the technical term, then I get an extra 3. You know what? I'm going to go with this one. This one here. All right. So we've planned our cards, and now we're going to deploy our volunteers and specialists. Everyone's done that? So we flip it. Now we can do these in any order, which is advantageous, and it doesn't matter because, say for example, I use red over here to grab a resource that I can then use on this card to get the extra. So order does matter, and you have carte blanche authority to do whatever you want with the order. So I have red and I have yellow. Now, I can put them here or in here if I want to. Notice, however, if I really did want something nearby, I could pay a moving van for each different location. Other than that, I could go. For example, say that I really wanted a book and I just couldn't do it. So then I could put it on red, or I would probably put it on blue if I could. And then I would pay 1 2 resources, and then I could basically grab this one. So these are a precious commodity because you can only get these back normally through victory points, by giving up victory points. So you don't want to do that frequently. That's not fun frolicking. So I place those 2 cubes, then I get 3 coins, which I then place here. And if I were to give a wrench, which I do not have a wrench, but I do have a battery, I would get 3 extra coins. I'm not going to worry about the coins right now. I think I'm okay. So I deployed our volunteers. Volunteers are the colored cubes, and our specialists are the ones that do special powers. And that's it. That's it for step 2. Step 3 is when we look to see if we can complete any of our goals. Can we? Well, here I've got to get a purple card, a blue card, and 2 yellow cards in some sort of row. It doesn't have to be in order, just in row. Nowhere near that. A to A means I have to get from A here over to the next A over there by connecting my cubes. Nowhere near that. And then I have to get 2 scout tokens that match this style. And we're nowhere near. We're not even close to nowhere near. Or to anywhere near. So we're going to go ahead and let that one go. I thought we get 5 of these. I'll check later. All right, so then we look and we go, okay, do I have water and a wrench? I do not have water. I do not have a wrench. Silly, silly. But look, I have food and I have fuel. I have food and I have fuel. So I pay these and I get this card. Now, what does it let me do? Well, the first thing it does, it says, put it in your hand. It looks like a carrot, but it's not. I don't think it care at all. And then it says I can place a cube on any red area that's next to the one I already have. So there are no red areas. If I can do that, I can pay a moving van. I can pay Hertz Rent-A-Truck to actually skip a place. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to skip over here and place it there, and at least I get something out of it. And then this just goes into the can, goes into the tube. All right, so we're done with that. And we now have in our hand 5 cards. This objective, nothing. Now scouting. Scouting's interesting because at this point, you always scout 1 tile from 1 district if you want. So you always get to look. There's no downside in looking. So you take anything adjacent to one of your cubes and you look and you see, what can I do? Scout value 6, 5, and 4. Look at that. So I've got cost is 6, 5, and 4. This gives me 2 tools. This gives me a fuel. This gives me a tool. Now notice that the cost is, the higher the cost, the better it is. You can also do the double whammy on the bottom, and that's cool too. That gives you like mega bonuses, but you're not going to get that in turn 1. So then I look and I decide how can I send enough to scout? I've got 1 scouting point, 2 scouting point, 3 scouting point, 4 scouting point. And as you go at certain points, you can earn these tokens that give you 3. Those really bump it up a lot. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take these 4 and I'm taking a risk because I really don't want to get rid of that one, but that's a possibility. And of course, the doctor never scouts. She heals. She's a healer. A red healer? A blue healer? Who knows? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get this token. This token gives me 1 wrench. Gut wrenching. All right. And then I get to place it over here in my area because at the end of the game, you're going to get points for the sets that you create of different types of scout tokens. These, and you don't show these to your opponent, get put face down. And you don't have to scout. You can look, but then not send out a scout party. That's fine too. But here's the tricky part. Now, whenever you scout, you have to get rid of 1 of your cards. And they have to go to the hospital. No matter what, someone gets wounded. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of inside jobs if you're guaranteeing someone's going to get wounded. So what card did I lose? Please not the 2 colored one. Crap. Okay, the scout. So the scout goes into the slammer. All right. So he's in the hospital. He's out of it. How do I get him back? Really? The doctor's the only way to get him back. I'll have to play the doctor at some point. Now that's kind of a blessing and a curse, though. It's really interesting because, and we'll find out later. All right, we've scouted, we've done our work, and now it's new objective times. Now you can buy objectives to fill into your area here. Now how do you do that? Well, any row that's full, you pay 4 whatever card you pick. Any row that's got 2, you pay 3, no matter which card you pick. And if you've got 1 card left, you pay 2. So I think, I mean, in some of these you fill out, you complete them. They don't go into your hand. Instead, they go into an area where you can do check mark actions. And so at the end of every round, you can do your check mark actions, which is kind of cool. Like this would be cool, because if I can pay 7 coins and get a row of blue, blue, and yellow, I get a point. I get to put a cube anywhere, and then every turn, whenever it's check mark time, I'm going to get 3 coins. So that's kind of a nice thing to bank on. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and pay my 4 coins. 4 coins in the fountain. And I'm going to grab myself, looking at the future. I'm going to go ahead and grab the bank. Alright, so now we have that as a goal. That is a future goal. Collect money, get that row, get something happy. Then we do cleanup, which is odd, because cleanup usually I think of as the end of the phase. This is the third from the end of the phase. Very weird. In this case, and everything shows you, if you have perishables, like water or food, food always just gives you money, and then you have to take the cubes back, so you can't just stockpile food. And then water, you can get rid of 1 water to get a coin, or you can get rid of 2 waters, and then you get scout tokens. Those are nice. So those are the only 2 that actually have issues where they don't stay around, and it makes sense thematically. And then you can discard 1 unfinished objective. If you're like, there's no way I'm going to complete this one, then I can just get rid of it, because that way you're not burdened down by objectives. But then the rightmost card of each row is discarded. And we add again. If a row was ever cleared out, you immediately add 3 back. Just FYI, for all you completionists. Then secure districts. This would only matter if, in fact, and I'll show you a scenario, you had, on this turn, completed or surrounded an area. Now, multiple people could do this, but if you surround an area, then these leave. You can take 1 of your houses and place it on there. And what does that do? Well, that's a checkmark action, which means that from now on, at the end of every turn, you have the option of using this checkmark action. Plus, you get points for as the amount of for the 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes. You go here and go, oh, I filled out a 4 area space. I get 5 victory points. So everything feeds into everything else. And that's how that would work. But we haven't achieved that yet. So that's how you secure districts and get points and make everyone in the world happy. Finally, you refresh your hand. Now this is one, right now, if you have 0 to 4 cards in your hand, you can take the biggest pile and put it into your hand. That's how you refresh. Now why it mattered, because this guy went into the hospital, I went down to 4 cards. So while I had to give up the scout, it also means that I instantly get a refresh of a hand. So it's kind of a mixed blessing. Weird, but that's how it works. And then that's going to be the card. And then checkmark actions. I don't have any now, but say if this were completed, then this would be the time I'm going to go like, hey, cool, 3 coins in the fountain. And that's it. That's an entire turn. That's how the entire game goes. You continue to play this way. There's really no major changes. You just flow and flow and flow until you get to the point where you exhaust all these cards, and then there's the reserve goes into play for 1 more last round, after which you count up points, and whoever's got the most wins. It's pretty simple. So with that, let's get to my final thoughts and see how Blackout Hong Kong wound up for me in the likeness department. Okay, let's talk about Blackout Hong Kong. First off, let's go over the cons of this game. I would say that after Great Western Trail and Mombasa, the theme here it's so disconnected and decoupled that you can see the scaffolding and the construction porta potties from where they abandon the thematic presence, to be honest with you. I feel like the game really puts you in a place of just being cogs in a machine that whirs and purrs and to some degree allures. The rondel approach is bone dead simple. There's really nothing to tout about other than it's not a detrimental. And there's nothing in the manual, in the box, on the board, on the pieces, and only a shadow of inspiration in the cards telling you that there's a story going on here. It's described, but not embraced. Generic names and places, check marks. I mean, literally, hey, do your check marks. There's nothing thematic there. I mean, the map of Hong Kong might as well be a map of outer space. I mean, honestly, it looks like the puddle on a poorly handled oil change to me. It's like they decided the theme is for cowboys and decided that an unfurnished apartment was still an apartment, so game on. Except the campaign. I will make a caveat to that. The 5 story segments of the campaign that you're actually doing, and the card art, I mean the art on the cards and stuff, it actually does bring out this essence of potential that there was something really cool that could be made of this here. It's tantalizing. In fact, it just kind of gives a shadow, a sampling that made me want more and made me feel like the whole cohesion of this could have been a lot more interesting with a lot more imbuing of these elements of blackouts occurring in a major city going on. It's as far as that goes, it's untapped and it's forgettable. If they had just gotten the Scorpions to play music in the background while I played, might have been better. Blackout! Okay, so I've been harsh on it, but let's go over the pros that I feel about this game. Despite the fact that it's a pizza box manual, it's a great manual. Everything I need to know in the order in which I need to know it. I have no question that was unanswered, really, about the game. It flowed. As a matter of fact, it was a smooth, procedural approach to playing the game. Reminded me a little bit of like Tokaido, where you get to go off the beaten path just a little bit more as you make your way, and in this case, solving the problem of a major blackout. It's a procedural, sequential, moving, natural moving of the sub-steps that you're doing. You're starting off, you're laying your cards, you're playing your cards, you're figuring out your objectives, you're scouting, you're doing all these things that are branching farther and farther out. Yeah, it's good. It's kind of a conveyor belt approach to this lockstep actions, and it's because there's smaller actions, everyone's kind of going around taking them as they go. It really does help the proceedings continue. Deckhand management is really clever. It's like a mini excursion in its own right, where you're placing your cards in stacks, going, which ones do I want back the fastest, and I want to put them in the big stacks, but eventually they all grow, and eventually you'll get them back in and stuff. That was something I hadn't seen before, and was interesting. The cadence of the game, the choices you make, they all blend together in a fashion that really just keeps moving forward, always forward. There's no bad choices per se. You're doing something to advance somehow. Other than scouting. Scouting, you're taking a risk. And that actually brings into itself its own little push your luck game. Like, I want to send out all my guys to accomplish this big objective, and then I have to roll the dice to decide which one of my guys winds up in the hospital. Is it someone I really wanted, or maybe someone I was less enthused about? And which is an oddity, because it feels like you lose someone, but is that sometime a good thing or a bad thing? Do you wind up sending them a get well card you don't really mean, because you really did want this low powered card out of there anyway, and off you go to the medical facilities? There's an endless way to score little micro victories in this game. You've got your scouting tiles, and you get those from your scouting. You've got your objectives that you're completing, and you feel a sense of completing because they give you rewards right there, and they give you rewards for the future as well. There's the emergency things that are going on. I gotta go grab these, getting cards, and pulling them in and figuring those out. Check marks, all these little ways that it works. So, final thoughts. Great Western Trail is still the high mark of the games that Pfister has produced. Blackout Hong Kong does not arrive close to that thematically. It's engrossing. There's just no way you're going to capture that same engrossing presence of life on the Great Trail of the Great West. But there is a curious likability and a Zen-like cascade of opportunity present in this game that defies its remarkable unremarkableness. I liken it to, say, Top Pot Donuts or Voodoo Donuts. One of your coworkers brings them in one time and goes, "Hey, donuts in the break room, Top Pot Donuts, Voodoo Donuts, you're there, and you're just basking in the tastiness of these donuts." Contrast that with someone coming in, another coworker's like, "Hey, I was at Spiffy Mart, and they got a dozen donuts in a box, and I brought them in," and you're like, "That's cool.
you know, maybe not as in high esteem, maybe not that grail moment, but you do migrate over to the break room and you do grab a donut, and then another, and then another, and pretty soon that's Blackout Hong Kong. You'll often, I will probably play a slightly less awesomest game more than I would maybe even Great Western Trail, because sometimes you need just a simple Zen-like experience to go. Sometimes you get home and you just want to play a game that's got the math of least resistance, and that would be where this fits and where it fits well. I'm still trying to get over the fact that they didn't employ scorpions, man. You missed an opportunity, Alexander. But I'll get over it. I will cope. In the meantime, Blackout Hong Kong, despite all of the negatives I had, is frankly a subtle hit that I'm not going to probably turn down and take into the table, because it just is a creatively entertaining feeling that honestly maybe will get to the table more than it probably deserves based on description alone. So check it out, Blackout Hong Kong, and thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.